With this session update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. Governor Tim Walz signed 2 bills into law. The Crown Act, which prohibits discrimination based on cultural hairstyles and textures, and a bill that establishes June 19th, or Juneteenth, which celebrates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans as a state holiday. Here are those bill signings.
Good morning, everyone. As folks are getting settled, for those Minnesotans who may not have understood this bill or understand, it's a big deal. And so I hope and I want to thank all the folks who came here. I want to thank the folks who have made this possible. You're going to hear from the lead authors, the Lieutenant Governor, and those that have worked on this. Just to be very clear, in just a moment, we're going to do the signing on the Crown Act, prohibiting discrimination in Minnesota by hair. And Lieutenant Governor and I were just talking, the irony of an older white bald guy. But that's the problem in many cases. That's the problem. People making decisions for folks that do not come from community or do not understand what's in community. And that's why when our democracy works right, when the legislature looks like the community and legislators bring their voice, because people are discriminated against this, and discrimination has no home and no place in Minnesota. So moving forward on these, you're going to hear from President Champion in just a moment. You're going to hear from the lead author in the House, Representative Gadje. You're going to hear from folks who've lived this life and brought their authentic selves to fixing issues in Minnesota. I'm going to also give a thank you once again, because I hope Minnesotans are starting to recognize this. Speaker Hortman and Leader Dietzig's leadership is clearing the table of things that should have been done years ago. And in all fairness, we're done in the House under leadership of Speaker Hortman, and now you're seeing the leadership and these new members of the Minnesota Senate by Leader Dietzig and President Champion make a difference. So I'm excited to be here with all of you. Again, the act itself, the impact it makes, the message we're sending to our children, all of our children. We've been talking about making Minnesota the best state in the country for children and their families to live. That's going to include education, health care, safety, and all that. It's going to also include being sure that you are seen, heard, and valued for who you are, and our laws protect your ability to be exactly that. So it's an exciting day. I look forward in just a moment to signing this, and every day is exciting around here when you've got a co-worker like Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. So.
Thank you. And I'm pulling out the box if you want to use this later. Anybody? I'm a little taller. All right. Yeah. So I'm so excited about today, and if you just look at this beautiful room, this is, at least as far as I'm concerned, the biggest bill signing we've had in this space, and so again, it should be. This is a historic moment for the state, but I also want to just name this. As the governor mentioned as well, we've been hearing some critiques from folks who've said, oh, they're moving too fast. They're doing too much. Well, let me tell you that we know that black women and the black community have been waiting way too long for this bill. And as we have our beautiful sisters from the Senate who are just walking in, and brothers, Senator Latz. This is a really powerful moment, as the governor mentioned as well, but it bears repeating. With every election cycle, the Minnesota legislature looks more like Minnesota. And it matters that there are 3 black women who now serve in the Minnesota Senate. And it matters Because when we are at the table, things change. Right. They change. So I am just grateful to be able to be a small part of this today. And as someone who comes from a community where our young boys in particular are told things about what their hair should look like. It's too long, it's too this. I celebrate this day with all of you as well. So as the governor said, hate and discrimination have no place in this state, especially when it comes to our hair. Our young people should be able to be their full, beautiful, authentic selves in every space, in every place they go. And today, we get one step closer. So I had a whole lot of talking points. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Today is a good day. We are doing right by Minnesotans, and we are especially doing right by these little ones who are gathered here with us today. We're so glad that you're here. And with that, our champion on so many issues, but on this issue in particular, it is my honor to introduce Representative Esther Agbaje.
Whew, this is, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Governor. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Hi, everyone. My name is Esther Agbaje. I represent a district that covers parts of downtown and parts of North Minneapolis.
That's right.
This is a wonderful day for so many Minnesotans. But I'm going to start with a number of thank yous because this wasn't done just by me or just by Senator Champion. We had a whole lot of people behind us. So first and foremost to Commissioner Moran. Commissioner Rena Moran was the first to carry this bill in Minnesota in 2019, along with former Senator Jeff Hayden, who's in the audience. Thank you for your leadership and joining immediately on the national movement for the Crown Act. I also want to give a shout out to Adjoa Asamoah, who is one of the leaders of the Crown Act Coalition at the national level. She has been working on this bill nationwide and at the federal level since the Supreme Court declined to weigh in on whether natural hair was an immutable part of race in 2017. I have also want to thank the governor again and his administration, but especially Commissioner Rebecca Lucero. She has supported this bill from the very beginning and let us know that if we could get it through the legislature, that you would sign it, and you did. And finally, my bill partner, Senator Bobby Joe Champion. Oh, yeah. He has been a great partner in all the things that we do for our wonderful district and the great state of Minnesota. And he's been a major supporter of this bill, even when we had a major uphill climb in the Senate last term. But in 2023, we knew that this was the time for Minnesota to join 19 other states to say that we are protecting people facing discrimination, and we want more people to show up as their authentic selves. Yeah. With this law, we are saying that we will not allow hair discrimination as a proxy for race discrimination. That's right. We are also saying that it is perfectly fine to show up as you are. Black children, and especially young black girls, have been prevented from fully participating in school because of a lack of understanding about their hair. The Crown Act helps us move closer to a society where all children are affirmed. Legislation won't fix everything, but it is the foundation. And with it, we will continue to change the culture, and young people, like my baby cousins, don't ever have to feel that they need to change their hair in order to get a job, participate in school events, or in sports. So I'll just close with a quote from U.S. Representative Ayanna Pressley, which I think is really apt for this moment. If we can legislate hurt and harm, I think we can legislate healing. I think we can legislate justice. Today, with the signing of the Crown Act, we are taking a step towards justice. Thank you. And with that, I'll introduce Senator Bobby Joe Champion.
Well, I don't think I need that. Let me just say that. Let me just say, first of all, thank you to everyone that's here. Thank you to the governor. Thank you to the lieutenant governor. And thank you to my amazing House representative and partner in crime, I'll say, on this bill, Esther Badger. Can we give her another hand? Because she's just a wonderful person. And, you know, I won't repeat the things that have been said already. We know we have another bill signing to do even after this, the Juneteenth bill as well. But what I do want to say is that some of you might be thinking, why did I carry this bill when you look at my hair? Like you look and see the long locks that I have, and you'll say, why did you do it? Well, I do have two sons that have their hair in dreads and locks. And though they sometimes laugh at me when they look at my hair, when I say I'm going to get a haircut, and they say, that is a hair massage, you're not going to get a haircut. I then remind them that this is their future. But it's because I want to make sure that no matter how they decide to wear their hair, that they have an opportunity to be judged on their skills and qualifications, and they should not be discriminated against. And so I want you to know that as we continue to go forward, that to me this is a step forward, but we have so much more work to do because we want to make sure that all of us are included when we think in terms of success and opportunity. And so I'm also excited to see Babington here, and also Vusi and Natando Zulu and others that always taught us that it was okay to be our authentic selves. And I want them to know how much I appreciate that. You know, there is also something to be said that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And by being fearfully and wonderfully made, we know that God chose us just the way we are. And that we should have the opportunity to walk in any space and have that boldness of, I am valued, I am great, and I'm going to show you that I'm valued and that I'm great, and I'm going to make this space better because I'm here. So thank you so very much, and thank you to everyone that's here. Thank you, Tiffany. Let me tell you, we had some testifiers who came in and sat at that table, Tiffany being one of them. And she sat there and talked about not only the group that she represents, but also her experiences. And for her to share that so that she could humanize what we were there to do. So I want you and everyone else here to know that I sincerely appreciate you and appreciate all the work that you do. So thank you so very much.
Senator Champion. It was a pleasure to sit beside you in the hearing that day. Good morning. I am Tiffany Daniels, and I'm the Managing Director for the Minnesota Business Coalition for Racial Equity. And it is that role that brings me here today to celebrate in the passage of the Crown Act, but it is also my experience as a Black woman. It's taken centuries, and it's taken the last few years since this bill was introduced for Black men, women, and children to finally start getting the respect we've always deserved in this country. I want to join in the appreciation for the previous bill carriers for having the vision to start this conversation and this dialogue in the state of Minnesota. I'd like to thank Governor Walz and the current legislature for moving this bill forward with such tenacity and focus. We must continue to build environments, schools, workplaces, organizations, where everyone has the freedom to express their thoughts, their ideas, their authenticity to its absolute fullness. And that includes down to how their hair naturally grows from their heads. It is then and only then do our schools, do our companies, do our organizations start to fully represent and benefit from the fullness of our diversity. This is a proud day. It's a proud day for me as a Black woman, as a mom, and as the Managing Director for a racial equity-focused business coalition here in the state of Minnesota. I'm proud, and this is a day that we can all hold our heads high. So thank you.
Yeah. I want to thank all our speakers, but make note of this. I think Minnesota should be very proud. This is bipartisan legislation.
That's right.
These are folks coming together, and I think those thanks need to be given. It's not a partisan issue, and that is a big deal when it comes to this. So let's make this law. Let's sign it. There we go.
That's what I'm going to say. Right by you. Yep.
Sign my name.
There we go.
It's kind of messy.
Ooh, look at that.
That one's gone. There we go. That one's done. We should have used different colors. It would be more fun if we had more colors. That one's done.
Working on that sore hand, Governor.
There we go. Thank you to the speaker and the leader, and it's done. Well, once again, good afternoon now to everyone. And while we have some of the same people, maybe we'll check somebody on the lamp. Thanks, Jane. There it is. Just grateful. And once again, a piece of legislation on this. Thank yous to the folks you're going to hear from, the authors and everyone. But I do think, and I hope it doesn't get lost in this, these are bipartisan legislation that have advocates on both sides of the political spectrum to make this happen. And that's, I think when we can get into a charged environment or the idea is to score points rather than getting things done, we run into trouble. This was about getting things done, recognizing Juneteenth in the state of Minnesota as a state holiday. It's important. So on that day, as a time of both celebration and understanding of telling the history, I think many of us knew, and I listened to parts of this debate, and I know the folks up here know, this is a lot of times of educating people. There are many times barriers are put in place and misunderstanding of one another because we're not doing our part in educating and telling the history. So telling the history of Juneteenth, this will be a day of celebration. It'll be a day of a state holiday, but it'll be a day of educating folks why this is important, why folks worked hard at this. And again, in Minnesota, we're not afraid to tell all of our history, all of our history. Black Americans and black Minnesotans need their history told, and our students can deal with this. They understand. They want to be critical thinkers on what this country and the greatness of what we can do in this country when we acknowledge these types of events and these types of holidays. So I, for one, am incredibly grateful. Again, this was something that folks had asked for. I believe now we have hit the tipping point. We are the 26th state, so now the majority of states in this country. The majority of states recognize Juneteenth, and of course we keep moving that, and I think the goal is to move that to a federal holiday too, is what we need to do. So just grateful once again. All of this is done in partnership. I'm just glad that the Lieutenant Governor and I can play our part in making this happen. And with that, Peggy Flanagan.
Thank you so much. So I could do this all day long. This is really, really wonderful. And to be in a space and a place where there are so many folks whose fingerprints are all over this bill, are all over this day. You can feel it. You can feel it in this space. And it's a real honor to be a small part of it. So these are the leaders who are making history. And Juneteenth is a powerful celebration that was overdue to become an official holiday here in Minnesota. You know, and as the governor said, our young people can handle the truth. And in fact, they deserve to know the truth. As we're talking about telling the truth and acknowledging our history, one of the things that we talk about in our home is the concept of America. And that she is not done forming yet. And that when we acknowledge history and what has happened and tell the truth, we can reflect on how far we've come. We can reflect on how far we have to go. And what our individual responsibility is to make this country and make this state better is all about. So thank you to everyone who is making our state and our country better by your work of making this an official holiday. And I want to just acknowledge that it's pretty, you know, this is a good day too when you have a social studies teacher who's the governor of Minnesota. And I'll say that our governor isn't afraid to teach an AP class, frankly. It's also served, today is an important reminder also that our nation's deep roots of oppression and racism still exist in Minnesota and across the country. So we will never stop working until racism is undone in this state. We will never stop working until Black Minnesotans and Minnesotans of all races are seen and heard and valued and protected and believed. And this bill is just the beginning. Today is just the beginning of everything that we can do together to make Minnesota the best place to raise a family. And that includes making hair discrimination illegal. It includes telling the truth about who we are, where we've been, and looking forward with hopefulness as to where we are going. So thank you so much to President Champion and Representative Richardson for your tireless work in making this a reality, prioritizing things that matter. Today matters, and getting this bill here today. I am so excited that we have a leader in the legislature who leads with a quiet calmness of always understanding what is right. Not Bobby Joe. I have lots of wonderful things to say about you too, President Champion. Who leads with a quiet calmness, always with a focus on what is right and what is just and who she is and where she comes from and who looks to her for guidance and for wisdom. And that is our Representative Ruth Richardson.
So there's a lot of joy in this room today, and it's taken a long time to get to this point. And I just want to reflect on the fact that I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot of people right now within this space. I am the great-great-granddaughter of enslaved peoples. I'm the great-granddaughter of a traditional Black midwife, granddaughter of sharecroppers, and I'm the daughter of a mother and father who grew up picking cotton in the fields of Mississippi and Alabama, having their labor exploited. It is not lost on me that I am in fact my ancestors' wildest dreams. I'm standing on their shoulders today. I'm also standing on the shoulders of the late Representative Jefferson, who actually started this conversation back in 1996 in the State House. And when he brought a bill forward to recognize Juneteenth, it was unanimously supported by his colleagues. And Minnesota became the 4th state in the nation to recognize Juneteenth. And as we become the 26th state to recognize Juneteenth, We almost got to unanimous, not quite. There was one vote, but I want to just echo what the governor said. This was bipartisanly supported. And I think it's also important that we recognize, as we are passing this legislation today, that our work is not yet done. Celebrating Juneteenth allows us to celebrate a more inclusive freedom. As Frederick Douglass said, what to a slave is the 4th of July. And so it's an opportunity for us also to reflect on the fact that there is a promise that was made to us that all are created equal, that we are still working to attain. So we have an opportunity here as we take this important step forward to also recognize that as Minnesota remains home to some of the worst disparities for Black people within the nation, that this is just a step in the right direction. And I hope that we will continue to find bipartisan support as we work to build a Minnesota that works for absolutely everyone. And with that, I want to also thank my brother in justice, Senator Champion, and also introduce him to come up and say a few words.
First of all, let me say that I echo all the comments of Representative Richardson. I do want to stop and thank the governor and lieutenant governor just for your vision and your thoughtfulness. Also want to recognize our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, who was always also fighting for this as well, along with Randy Statton and all the others that I can think about. And let me say this, my mother is from Hooks, Texas. Hooks. And my dad is from Hope, Arkansas. And they migrated from the south to the north. What's also important about this is that you hear the amen corner back there that I like to say. That is the richness of our community always coming forward. I remember Juneteenth being Freedom Day. And when we were at the Way Opportunities Unlimited and Spike Moss and the others were there, we were taught African American history by the great Mahmoud El-Kati, who we always want to give reverence to. And then I know also that, you know, Pillsbury United took it over and started doing some wonderful things, and that was Michael Chaney and Mary Pargo and Greg Reed and all the others, right? But, you know, Juneteenth is not just a look back. It is a look back, but it's also for us to recommit ourselves to the future. And that we don't forget the shoulders that we stand on. We don't forget their sacrifices, but we pay it forward by what we do. So that's why it's always important for us to think about and talk about those people who did this great work before us, because we don't want anyone to suffer from this delusion that we do it on our own. We don't do these things on our own. So the reason why I talk about Hooks, Texas and Hope, Arkansas, and then North Minneapolis and all the other places and spaces in Mississippi, it's because there were people who fought for us to have the right for us to stand in these spaces today, who wasn't looking for their name to be up in lights, who was just looking to serve because they wanted our lives to be better than theirs. And so I also want to thank all the authors on not just the House bill, but also on the Senate bill. And a person in particular I want to thank is Senator Limmer, who stood on the floor when some other strange things were developing. He stood up and said, wait a minute. And I'm appreciative of that, because this is a bipartisan effort. So there's Senator Herr, and there's the others whose name I'm escaping right now, and Shamika's looking at me like, why would you forget right now? But I want them to know that every person who signed on, that I'm grateful. and all the other senators, Umu Verbatim and Senator Muhammad, they all had to go back to, where are they? Back there. I want to appreciate them along with Aaron May Quaid, you know, and all the others. Those are in the Senate. But again, thank you. When the governor signs this, we are going to celebrate, and then we will pay homage to all those other great organizations and people who kept it going. Because guess what? It is Freedom Day, but it's also an indication that we have so much more work to do. And thank you, Senator Jeff Hayden, if you give my brother some love there. Thank you. Very good. Let's see.
Behind, right behind you.
There he is.
Hello, everyone. 26 years ago, in St. Cloud, Minnesota, 2 students approached an African-American Male Forum, which is a group of professors and community members, African-American community members and professors at St. Cloud State, and said, from Texas, Jared Hall and Pastor James Alberts, and said, we want to celebrate Juneteenth. And everybody looked at them and said, what is that? Yeah. They had no idea what it was. And so those 2 students from Texas, who their whole life celebrated Freedom Day, brought that Freedom Day to St. Cloud, Minnesota. I stand before you today, 26 years later, we still have our celebration of Freedom Day. I'm very excited. On June 16th of this year, now with the signing of this bill, we are so excited that now I also stand, like everyone else, on the shoulders of those before me. And those underneath me now stand on my shoulders, that now we have the opportunity to celebrate Juneteenth and celebrate Black history, our history, from now and forevermore. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks to Buddy. Thanks to the leaders, again, Speaker Hortman and Leader Dietzig for moving this forward. And I see a lot of friends here. The more I look around, I'm seeing folks who are here. Senator Champion and I spent some time last fall together, and we were commenting. I mentioned one time, I said, us doing that on that day was the third of those things that only things you can count on: death, taxes, and some elected officials showing up in the Black community right about in early November. Right about late October, early November, and people kind of know. And I remember at that time saying, and there were folks there, and Reverend Babington Johnson's behind me, and Jonathan and others, it said, well, we appreciate you being here, but we care about, are you going to show up in February next year? Are you going to show up when the time comes to make those differences? And what I want to say, in a bipartisan manner, elected officials showed up today. Let's make this law.
Yeah, students, we got students right here. Come on, Jada.
She's just watching.
Oh, and as the governor signed, we have the first Miss Black Juneteenth with us. Yeah.
You see him?
The kids, so precious. Oh my God.
Such a cute photo. Oh my gosh. And he's signing fine, and we'll give it to the people.
This one for the one we hold up. Ready?
So he gave her the pen that he signed it into law.
It's the law of the land. Well done, everyone.